Okay, I'm going to kick it off. Welcome to the Retail and Consumer Goods Forum at Spark and AI Summit 2020. Some general housekeeping rules. Please mute your connections, submit questions via the chat panel. Our moderator will direct questions during the session. We also have a great panel at the end of the session, and be sure to think of questions to ask of the panel as we go through that. There was a question about sharing of information. The session will be recorded and will be available upon demand immediately following the presentation. We'll also make the presentation material available to anybody that requests it. Today's agenda, we're going to talk first about the growth of retail and consumer goods as an industry within Databricks. Spend some time and talk about planning for the new normal in retail and consumer goods. Walk through top retail and consumer goods use cases, a surprise around resources to help you accelerate value. And last but not least, we have a panel with 4 tremendous leaders in the retail and consumer goods industry that I'm especially excited about. Retail and consumer goods is the single largest industry at Databricks. We have over 350 customers. If you add all of our customers together, collectively, they generate over $1 trillion in annual revenue. They operate over 250,000 global locations. They employ over 5 million people, and they serve over 80 countries and 6 continents. We're still working on our first opportunity in Antarctica. We power the world's leading brands. In every major market that we're in, we have the top retailers and the top consumer goods brands. And what this means is that you can have confidence that as you are building out your capability in your personal capability with Databricks, or whether you're hiring people, know that we've trained thousands of people within the industry on how to work in Databricks so you can grow your teams, and you also know that your skills are going to be marketable with other companies. You look at the growth that we've had, it's been explosive growth with no signs of slowing down over the past several years. I think the primary reason why we've seen such success is that our focus in Databricks is on delivering value. We don't look at it in terms of buying capacity as a platform. We focus on what's the problem that you're trying to solve and how do we help you rapidly accelerate this. There's a great study if you go to Databricks.com and search for Forrester. We did a study with Forrester on the total economic impact, and you see some of the types of ROI, 417% ROI, net present value, 23 million. The accomplishment I'm most proud about, though, is the payback period of less than 6 months. And this really speaks to the approach where focus on a business problem, quickly solve that business problem, get into positive ROI, and then go on to your next capability. So I was talking with our panelists and preparing for this session, and I think you'll hear from Brad speak later. And the one thing that he said is, please don't talk about the return. Everybody's dealing with the return right now, but what people really want to be thinking about is, what does that new normal look like? How do we reimagine our business? There's been a lot of challenges with what we've gone through in the industry, but it's also creating new opportunities for us to rethink and reimagine how we engage with consumers. And ultimately, we also think that there are going to be reforms in terms of the control of movement of people and goods that we should expect governments to start introducing over the next 12 to 18 months. This is a way of looking at it, a framework that McKinsey has published. They've been doing a great job. If you, we'll share this out and you can see beyond coronavirus. But if you go to McKinsey, they've done a really good job of describing the different stages and how companies are thinking about this. And it seems to resonate as I talk with our customers. As we think about the reimagination of retail and consumer goods, in the next 12 to 18 months, I'm really seeing 4 focus areas come up. First is, how do we redefine consumer engagement? As customers are moving increasingly online, how does loyalty and personalization play in this? And do we decrease other areas such as promotion? Acceleration of digital, store closures, and the success of e-commerce. We fast forwarded in most markets by at least 4 years the adoption rate or penetration of e-commerce and total retail sales. Supply chain resiliency. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but if you think about the disruptions that happened when certain markets shut down, we had double the average number of shipping container ships being idled, and the fits and starts as we come up. And even in the U.S. right now, we have the southern part of the U.S. that may go back into quarantine. And what does that mean to distribution centers in those locations and retail locations and consumer goods manufacturing plants? And then the last area that we're seeing is more the pace and acceleration of AI in general. And I'm seeing a trend that the companies that were first adopting this 18 months ago and have several successes are starting to separate from the pack from the non-adopters. And what does this mean from a financial and agility perspective in terms of being able to create war chests to compete against their competitors who weren't playing in the space? So e-commerce penetration from 2009 to 2019, this is the US, but similar patterns that we've seen in EMEA, Australia, Asia. We went from 6% in 2009 to 16% of total e-commerce penetration of US retail sales. In the 8 weeks of quarantine, that grew to 27%. So we accelerated the trend what would have taken 4 to 5 years of e-commerce penetration in the US. At the same time, loyalty and preference, as you think about how did consumers start to switch and change their buying behaviors during quarantine, one big trend was an acceleration of switching to private label and store brands. We've also seen the willingness to switch to new sites. You know, I mentioned if I go to an in-store aisle and I look for a product and it's not on the shelf, I find a product that's somewhere nearby on the shelf. If I'm online and I don't find the product on the shelf in the e-commerce site, I go to a new site. So we're seeing a lot of changes in terms of the definition of loyalty and preference and how consumers are shopping. We're also seeing a rapid growth and adoption of direct-to-consumer brands. Now, this was already at 24% year-over-year growth. And if anything, we've seen that rate accelerate during quarantine. Many of our direct-to-consumer brands actually stopped accepting new customers during the quarantine because they had more subscribers than they were able to scale up and serve. So the rise of subscription platform such as pioneers such as Dollar Shave Club, and Sarita is going to be in our panel later and talk about what she's seeing in the space. The introduction of new consumer goods brands. Every major consumer goods company that I speak with is either thinking about this or actively playing in this space. And direct-to-consumer brands, it's almost doubling e-commerce growth by 2 to 1. E-commerce at 14%. With direct-to-consumer, it's actually above 24% now. And we don't see any signs of this abating. So why do we think it's important in this new world, as I talk to customers, to focus on the consumer? Well, think about that growth percentage and think about the trends on loyalty and preference and think about the emergence of new channels for direct-to-consumer brands. We just introduced 11% in the US of consumers to a new way of buying. Now, that 11%, certain percentage of that was going to go to e-commerce already. It's about 2% that we expected in 2020 to start shifting in online channels. And we know that there's a certain percentage that's likely to revert back to traditional behaviors when locations start to open up again. There's this large swath, probably 5 or 6%, that's really up for grabs in terms of market share. You think about the reasons that they might stay, but the companies that are best able to engage and understand these consumers and capture this market share are going to accelerate their growth rate in the new normal at a faster rate than competitors. Talk about supply chain and impact. Everybody thinks about COVID as being an anomaly of an event, but as I was going through and looking at research, came to the realization that we have bad things happen to us on a frequent basis. And I think maybe something in the human memory makes us forget these bad things happening. But if you look at West Coast port slowdowns, hurricanes, typhoons in the West, operation risk from computer hacking, uneasiness or unrest in different parts of the world, we have frequent major disruptions that are regional, country-specific parts of countries. And in the past, you think about supply chains were primarily designed to be efficient. And now companies are increasingly understanding that we need to be focusing on the resiliency of our supply chains. And I think we're going to start to see over the next 12 to 18 months that companies are no longer going to be single sourced. The issue wasn't that we outsourced our manufacturing in one country to another country. The issue is that we outsourced our manufacturing to a single country. And how do we deal? And if we just shift that to another country, we've just shifted the risk to that new country. I think supply chains are going to start to emerge and have multi-source types of strategies, and that creates new challenges in terms of the routing of goods, movement of goods, inventory levels, et cetera, and that can significantly increase costs to businesses if we're not careful. And one interesting learning as we were going through the quarantine was that everybody was religiously focused on inventory management, but where you focused on inventory management varied by the type of industry that you were in. If you were in grocery, C-store, consumer goods, food, or consumer goods staples, especially cleaning supplies, you were entirely focused on real-time inventory reporting and demand forecasting. If you were in apparel, electronics, or other categories, you were probably looking at safety stock. How do I improve my working capital by reducing my safety stock levels? How do I minimize my returns and eliminate my future consideration? And the last area I mentioned for a focus was this idea of businesses need smaller and faster wins. If you look along the left, the way that we thought about data and analytics historically for the longest period of time was, let's get our environment stood up. Let's get the software configured, provision. Let's go through a traditional waterfall type of approach. And when we're about 18 months in, we have the data environment, the data ready, it's modeled, it's normalized. And the first project that our CFO approves is the project that's going to pay back the most of that. Now that project, because I just spent 18 months and on millions of dollars on building out an environment, it's going to be a big project. It's going to have a lot of risk. It's going to talk to different parts of the organization, and there's a high degree of failure with that. We know now that with the traditional models and analysis and the rate of change that's happening in the industry, you think about the supply chain, the resiliency, we can't wait 18 months. We can't wait 12 months. We really can't wait 6 months. We need a methodology and a platform that allows us to rapidly develop capabilities, immediately get value out of that, and then go to an adjacent capability and start to build a snowball effect of building out additional capabilities. Another way to think about this as we talk with our customers, and this seems to be our most successful customers, adopt a path of developing maturity. They focus, this is illustrative, they'll focus on an area. So for example, Consumer 360, and they'll get an MVP of this in place. And then they come to an inflection point and they say, we have this in place, it's delivering value. Do I go to an adjacent capability such as personalization of content, or do I increase the maturity of my Consumer 360? They do this in periods of 4 to 6 weeks, always iterating, and the method of prioritization is what's going to help me deliver the most value in the shortest period of time. We see companies that begin in this type of area with 1 or 2 use cases, and over the period of 18 months, they'll get to 10 or 20 use cases in production. In fact, I can talk to a customer and pretty much tell them where they're at and understand the type of ROI that they're getting out of Databricks as we talk with them. Really 4 groups of customers. Our new adopters, they're doing data science experiments. They're doing one single data science project. It's probably not in production. It's ad hoc. They're getting limited value that's coming out of this. Most adopters today, by percentage-wise, are in the 1 to 6 production use cases they have out there. They're getting low single digits in terms of ROI. They've probably been on the platform on Databricks for anywhere from 12 to 18 months. And then we get into the top 20%. Now, top 20%, they start scaling 6 to 20. We have some that are going more than this, and they have multiple production use cases that are being used. And they have penetration across multiple areas of the business. Data science isn't just a single function, but it starts to be embedded into different areas of the business, or even as product management where they embed it. Several customers are taking this approach. And then we have the top 1%. Everybody always wants to focus on the top 1%, and with good reason. They've started linking their models across their capabilities. They're starting to take capabilities where it's not just traditional analytics into machine learning and AI types of approaches, but they're actually looking what are new capabilities that we can develop for how we engage our customers and how do we transform our businesses. And they link it, and they have a predictive and real-time view of their enterprise. And that's really out of the entire group of 350 plus retail and consumer goods customers at Databricks, less than 5 are in that top 1%. So as you think about this, in terms of the impacts with what we've seen in terms of the new normal, different ways to engage consumers, we think about disruptions to supply chain, designing, for speed and agility. How can you be thinking about your approach when you're building your roadmap for 2021, and what are the types of things you should be structuring for and the types of projects that you should be looking at? The first is, it's imperative that you prioritize for speed and agility. We can't accept long lead times when we know that we don't know what's going to happen in 6 months from now. We need to be able to get quick value on things and iterate. And that obsession with the speed of value should be your prioritization metric. Designing for resiliency, especially in the supply chain. You have to expect there are going to be disruptions throughout the supply chain. Design for the efficiency demands of e-commerce everywhere. E-commerce places immense strains on your supply chain. As I mentioned before, you go in the store, if the product's not on the shelf, you find something nearby. But the rate of switching that we're going to see when you go to e-commerce, the loyalty factor changes significantly if you don't have products immediately available for consumers. Focus on the consumer. You got to be thinking first and foremost, how do I engage with my consumers 24/7? How do I think about my store execution to serve the demands of digital business? A buy online, pick up at store, or delivery, or reconfiguring stores. And improve the speed decisions as you think about consumer promotions. Time has been compressed. If you think about traditional consumer goods with grocery retail, we would plan our promotions 90 days in advance. In drug channels, that'd be 150 days in advance. In the e-commerce world, they're changing the promotions as they fly. And that needs to be the new understanding for how we think about promoting. But again, that places additional challenges on our supply chain. So the future of retail and consumer goods with unified data and analytics. This is the Databricks layer cake. And you think about all your different sources of data. I really do think that, and I'm biased obviously, but I think that what we have with Databricks is almost perfectly designed for solving the needs of the retail and consumer goods industry. So what are some of the top use cases as I talk to customers? What are some of the things that they're thinking about or working on, and where are they investing their dollars? I use the same framework that I used before in terms of new adopters, the majority of our adopters, the top 20%, and what are some of those emerging use cases? The new adopters are traditionally focused on data engineering. They're doing some BI and reporting, and certainly enhancements such as the Delta engine that are going to radically improve SQL query performance are going to help there. And they're looking at things like, how do I improve my overall data science machine learning workflow? How do I make my data scientists and data engineers more productive? We get into most adopters, the majority. The number 1 and number 2 use cases that we work with customers on, demand forecasting and personalized content and recommendations. I haven't been in a single conversation with customers over the past year where at least one of those 2 use cases hasn't come up as a priority. We're also seeing a lot that are working on promotion optimization. How do I get more return out of the dollars that I've spent? Price modeling, consumer 360 and segmentation. There's been a lot of talk about customer data platforms, but a customer data platform is just a repository of information. What people care about is gleaning the insights from this and taking action against this. And customer lifetime value, we just did a webinar and a series of blog posts on this, has become a really hot topic. And if anything, this feeds into promotion optimization to allow you to segment your users and target your promotions based on the expected lifetime end value of that consumer. When we get into the top 20%, linked personalization and promotion analytics. Like I just mentioned, if I understand the consumer and tie that into my promotion or my content recommendation, I get a higher marketing ROI. Linked supply chain inventory management. how do I tie in my safety stock with my demand forecast, with my returns prediction, get a total view of what's happening in my supply chain. And the emergence of supply chain control towers, as you think about different distribution centers and manufacturing plants and retail locations, how can I get a single pane of glass for what happened as well as what I expect to happen? Daily inventory allocation and optimization. I realize we're not talking about what happened during quarantine, but one of the interesting trends is that we had several customers that were running over 60 million models a day to allocate their inventory out to stores. It was one of the capabilities that allowed them to determine where to put the product to best suit consumer demand in a period when we saw major increase in spend in those channels. And fuzzy matching and ETL, one of the things that we're seeing as an emerging practice with the top 20% is that I'm working with new suppliers and I need to rapidly bring them in and out, but my item master, my products don't always match. And how do I enable probabilistic types of use cases where in ETL I can start to link my products and items together to speed the mastering so that I can quickly introduce new suppliers and distributors into the mix. And everybody always wants to ask, and I think there was even a question before, like, where do we see the future of AI going in retail and consumer goods? Listen, the first three columns, there is a lot of value that you can bring to your organization over the next 3 years in this first three columns. But if you are in that place where you've mastered those, the emerging practices that we're seeing, alternative data for forecasting simulation. Right now, many of your forecasting models have collapsed because they're based on past history data that doesn't resemble the current period. So we have people that are looking at POI data, mobile location data, other credit card, anonymized credit card information to try to improve their robustness or even supplant traditional forecasting methods. Employees 360, looking at the same types of practices that we had for understanding our consumers and taking that and focusing on how do we think about our employees. Some of the 1% are looking at generative adversarial networks for AI personalization and actually thinking about not trying to recreate what's in stores, but create new hyper-personalized experiences with consumers. Unified forecasting seems to be a really hot emerging trend right now. And with several customers asking about this, to how can I centralize my forecasting across my entire organization so that finance, supply chain, commercial are all using the same assumptions going into forecasting rather than having conflicting types of approaches. Predictive IoT and shop floor, especially in consumer goods, is emerging. I think one of the reasons this is waited to emerge is because accessibility of information from manufacturing plants is somewhat limited by connectivity, but with 5G, that's improving. We're seeing a lot of people taking their data from the historians and bringing it to IoT and doing predictive analytics, such as predictive asset maintenance and product line optimization. Computer vision, I'm really hot on this technology. I think computer vision is one of those technologies that has such combinatorial options in terms of the number of problems that you're able to solve with it. And I think we're going to see more and more work with computer vision. And I'm really excited that Alex Siscos from Everseen is here on our panel to talk today. And lastly, robotics. I think robotics is something where it's going to be, we have some customers that are working on this, and specifically for home delivery. And I think that we won't see anything in production for a few years, but they've started investing on it today. Now, the top use cases that I mentioned, demand forecasting, recommendations, every single meeting that I've been in, those two come up. Consumer 360 is emerging, especially with the shift as we go to e-commerce. And lastly, alternative and third-party data is really starting to take prominence because a lot of the existing models have collapsed. Okay, so one more thing I want to walk through before we then jump into our panel. If you think about your barriers to success with introducing data science, machine learning, and AI in your businesses, obviously we need to have data in the cloud. We need to have a platform to take advantage of that data, and Databricks helps you solve that. But then once we have that there, I need to have data science technical skills. I need to have domain knowledge on how to solve some of these very specific problems. And as I mentioned before, we don't want to spend a lot of time. We don't want to spend 6 or 9 months working on something. We want to spend 6 weeks to get an MVP out and to demonstrate value quickly. So something that we're extremely excited to announce as part of Summit is what we're calling solution accelerators. What these are pre-built tools to help you rapidly develop and deploy data science capabilities to accelerate your value. It solves the challenges of data science technical skills, industry knowledge, and a more prescriptive way of approaching the problem. Now, a way to think about this is it's a package, a collection of notebooks and enablement materials such as webinars, blog posts, POCs that provide you a 50% solution. So we've taken information, we've done leading research on emerging practices, we've taken public data sets, and we've developed a full solution that solves the problem end to end. Now, you're still going to have to go in and integrate with your data sources and your processes and do customization, but the idea is to allow you to go from an idea to a POC in one of these solution areas in less than 2 weeks. If you think about what it would take for you to do this today, you have to acquire data, research, engineer it, develop models, optimize the code on the platform, and then integrate data, integrate processes, customize, and deploy. We want to take these blue areas out and allow you to acquire your data, implement our notebook, and then focusing on integrating data processes, customization, and deployment. What are the solution accelerators that we're focused on? We'll eventually have solution accelerators in all of the common retail analytic capabilities. But for right now in e-commerce, we're focusing on classical segmentation, propensity modeling, real-time content recommendation, customer lifetime value, and survivorship and churn. When you think about the supply chain inventory area, right now we have causal forecasting, time series forecasting, and safety stock analysis, but we'll eventually extend this to also include on-shelf availability, returns prediction, and data engineering. If you're interested in solution accelerators, how can we learn more? Well, the first one is contact your account team. We're happy to implement a fast POC. We can show you how to load the code into your own environment, or we can do a POC with you. We had an example where my technical leader, Brian, who's listening in, got a call on a Friday afternoon, and by Monday morning, we had customer lifetime value running in the customer's environment. So contact your account team. Second area, Databricks blog. We publish a full blog on every one of our solution accelerators that walks through what the business problem is, why it's a challenge, some of the different approaches. We show you how we solved it. And in that blog, you have a link to the notebook that you can open up and immediately import into your own environment. And lastly, webinars. Check Databricks.com. We'll be publishing webinars on all of these solution accelerators over the next, the remainder of the year and into 2021. And in those webinars, we'll walk through the content when we'll show you how we implemented the notebook and some of the things that you need to understand as you would implement it in your own environment. So, yes.
We had one quick question on the accelerators. I thought it'd be a good time to throw it in now. The question was, do we provide any guidance on going back to the organization on ROI and what kind of value we get from these accelerators if they're implemented?
That's a terrific question. Yeah, we actually do. In fact, I worked, and I don't know if he's on the line, but we have a business value team. As I mentioned at the beginning, we focus on value. And Chris Rappaport, who leads our EMEA business value team, and I have partnered together to build up business value calculators based on best practice. Can help you say, for example, if I am introducing safety stock, based on my own numbers, what's the expected ROI that I can get as a result of that? Talk to your account team, but we have calculators that will be built on every single accelerator. So you can help build your own internal business cases. Okay, so we're going to shift over to the industry panel. Now, first of all, I want to introduce our speakers on today's panel. First, Saritha Avaturi is a Senior Director for Marketing, Data, and Technologies at Dollar Shave Club, a Unilever company. Saritha started her professional journey in technology world as a programmer, and through a series of successes has grown into a tech leader for enterprise data strategy. She's worked with organizations such as Yahoo, Citigroup Media, Velocity, which is now part of Ellie Mae, Legacy, and she's now at Dollar Shave Club. In her current role at Dollar Shave Club, she was responsible for building and augmenting their omni-channel marketing strategy and marketing mix modeling. Welcome, Saritha. Our next panelist is Brad Kent. He's a passionate leader of analytics and data management, helping organizations to better know their customers, evolving their marketing capabilities, and applying new technologies into their business. Brad has over 15 years of experience across a range of high-paced industries to implement big data technology, personalization, digital analytics, machine learning, segmentation modeling, and natural language processing in both business-to-business and business-to-consumer environments. As the VP of Analytics and Insights at Loyalty One, he oversees a talented team helping to serve the interests of 11 million Canadian households and dozens of retailers, financial institutions, travel companies, and more. As the Chief Growth Officer of retail AI unicorn Everseen, Alex Siskos leads the development and implementation of a holistic growth strategy. He has proven success in leading and developing world-class organizations with leadership roles spanning the retail, consulting, and analytics sectors at Walgreens, Accenture, Nielsen, and others. Most recently, Alex led the successful North American entry for Blue Yonder, specializing in applying cutting-edge AI methodologies such as replenishment and pricing. Focused on customer success at Everseen, Alex guides the company's go-to-market strategy, ensuring profitable growth for retail customers while cultivating strategic alliances and partnerships that catalyze Everseen's role in the space of computer vision and AI. And last but not least, my old friend Robert Rouge is this SVP and Chief Information Officer for Crossmark, an experienced industry veteran with years leading data initiatives with the world's largest brands at Nielsen and Coca-Cola. At Crossmark, Robert's team delivers smart solutions that help hundreds of the leading consumer brands grow faster and more efficiently. His data and AI capabilities also help direct the daily activities of tens of thousands of employees working in retail every day. Those people that you see hosting demos, resetting categories, replenishing goods in retail stores, there's a good chance that they're a Crossmark employee. Saritha, Brad, Alex, Robert, welcome. Thank you for participating on our panel.
Thank you for having me.
One moment. So I talked about some of these changes that we're seeing in the industry in my brief spiel. E-commerce is placing additional strains on retailers. We talk about the switching and the availability and the demands there. If in the past product wasn't available in the store, I could find a substitute product. With e-commerce, I can find a new store. We think about promotions that were planned 90 to 150 days out. With e-commerce, I can shift that promotional spending during the campaign. Robert, as you're working with brands to try to make this transition, what should brands be doing to enable speed and agility and accuracy to compete with the native e-commerce brands?
I think the answer is, first you need to have a full view, right? It used to be where it was very, very prohibitive to have e-commerce data, even loyalty card data pulled into the same view. That's the first step. The second is, if you don't remember that we're all just talking about a consumer and a shopper and they're two different people sometimes, you lose sight of what it is that you're trying to do, right? Always go back to your consumer. Does the product taste good? Is it priced well? Is there value in it in my day-to-day life? So I think it's part of staying focused on the simple things that are in the industry, but also leveraging technology that, in my memory, we couldn't have done that 5-10 years ago. Now pulling all the right data in the right place and making sure the data actually tells the right story, I think is it. And if you double down on that with running thousands of models against the same situation, the fact that they're making decisions faster than you in e-commerce, you can cut into that through forecasting and looking ahead and go where the puck is headed, not where it is right now. So I really think it's those three big things that you have to stay focused on. But I'm not so sure when Alex that taught me stay focused on the consumer and the shopper. Good learning.
I have a question about that. Retailers were doing a lot of promotion as their primary driver of consumption. And if anything, as we've seen this market share grab as we move to more e-commerce, and there's a good expectation that a lot of it could remain in that channel. How should we be thinking about this? Brad, does loyalty supplant promotions as the top focus for retailers? And if so, how should they be thinking about changing how they do consumer engagement?
Well, I think to even touch on the prior question about e-commerce, if you think about the best e-commerce experiences, they're usually, really just, they're using data to drive a great, seamless customer experience. There's nothing more to the secret of e-commerce than just that. Like, that's the difference between good e-commerce, great e-commerce, and mediocre. And there's nothing that says that you can't take that same philosophy and apply it to brick and mortar. And I think the challenge for retailers and CPGs has been they've been operating from a data deficiency relative to classical brick and mortar retailers. And I think loyalty programs run right kind of offer that glue of data to provide you kind of first party accurate profiles of who are these people, who are these consumers, what do they care about, who are my best customers, how do I win with them. And I think that I don't know that COVID should have changed how important loyalty is in Canada. I think it's kind of going through a bit of a renaissance as privacy becomes so much more important, and the bar is raised on privacy, and data becomes so much more important. But I think right now what we've seen with COVID is you saw a lot of shift where baskets are much larger. The trip splitting has been reduced, so consumers are consolidating their spending, and there are retailers that have been benefiting, winning from this. And I think the key for them is, take the time to understand who they are, who are these people, and how do you win with them. I think you did a great job of describing it in your slides where you said there are customers that are up for grabs. Now is the time for you to go after, really figure out how to deliver for them, reward them for coming into your stores, take that opportunity to do that now. And you're going to see a pullback as maybe a vaccine comes in, but you do have that opportunity right now to kind of grab some of that market share, hold on to that, and create some long-term brand switching.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation, and I think about the acceleration that we've seen with the time frame. I mean, historically in retail, we thought about loyalty. Loyalty was something that directed the coupons that you sent out, and now loyalty is what is their propensity to buy at any sort of moment? What are the occasions that they're thinking about? And I'm just curious, do you see the traditional methods falling away? Are we building new ones, or are we just building on top of that and just accelerating the rate as we do things?
I think what's changed, is the capability I think Robert touched on it, right? It's a lot of the same principles are still there. The fundamental principles of do right by the customer, reward the customer, the Pareto rule of where your customer value is coming from. Those are all true. I think what's true today, though, is the technology to do that accurately, quickly, with agility, I think being a key kind of word that you highlighted as well as part of your talk, that those things really do matter. And that's what's different today, is the agility, the cost of barrier entry, the expectations of the consumers that this is just the way that you should be doing business. I think that's what's really changed more than anything. And I think it's going to continue to, as maybe one of the long-standing changes from COVID is going to be just that. The consumers are going to continue to expect that mixture of, omni-channel, seamless customer experience. That doesn't matter whether I come to your store or I'm using your website, give me that relevancy. I think those expectations and the capabilities are so much more than what they were before, but the principles and kind of the game is still kind of the same.
You mentioned omni-channel. Saritha, I know that's a big focus for you at Dollar Shave Club, and I think it kind of ties in as well. We've seen e-commerce shift from episodic purchases to more brands are looking for annuitized revenue streams with subscription types of services. With the direct consumer brands at full capacity, new customers, contactless is coming. What are some of the changes that you've seen as you look at your business and more specifically the environment of subscription and e-commerce? What are some of those shopper behaviors that you think are permanently changed as a result?
There's a huge shift actually in the way we were perceiving e-commerce business in the past, pre-COVID versus post-COVID. Dollar Shave Club is in men's grooming services, and we were identified as an essential business in the marketplace. So we were operating. The biggest shift we saw is the consumer behavior in gathering the boxes, like we call it as a box, like we have a subscription business where users can put whatever they need in their box, and we give them a monthly recurrence box, like ship them to their doorstep. a lot of one-time purchases have increased than the recurring box purchase model. We have seen unexpected revenue coming in pockets from customer segments that we did not expect as a normal growth. We could easily differentiate that these are the loyal customers who had been our high lifetime value tiers, and these are the customers who are brand new customers, and they're stepping into this convenience mode of purchasing. So they are probably loyal to the retail businesses. With the COVID situation, now they have turned into convenience in order to protect themselves, and they are doing a lot of one-time purchases. And then there are segments of users who are actually adopting into the e-commerce model of purchasing, where they're shifting off of one-time purchases to, I like this product, I want to be loyal, and I am becoming a brand aficionado now, so I'm going to go into a recurring mode with you. So we are seeing 3 different segments of users as we go into the systems, and it has shifted quite a bit. Now our baseline has shifted. Now we have a huge cohort of one-time purchases, and our goal is to go shift them from one-time purchases into recurring purchasers who are on a subscription model, which obviously gives us a high lifetime value. And the great insights that we are getting by gathering this first-party data with compliance, by the way, with GDPR and CCPA compliance, what we are actually seeing is these consumers, their behavior on our website, their session duration, or how they're interacting with our products is basically showing that if we throw more content to our website and say that this product is good to you, we want to give you a quiz and identify what works best for you, and we actually give you a suggestion that this product might work better for you. I think we are seeing a lot more engagement from the users. Our users are spending a lot more of their time on the content we throw about health aspects, about sharing aspects, about the community aspects, and then relate how our products are going to help them. That is actually helping them a lot. That shift in the way we are pushing the content to our website and crunching the behavior of the users helped us efficiently segment off of these users and see how we can strategically move our one-time purchases into a more, brand, efficient, improve the brand efficiency rather than increase the product need or product efficiency. So that change we have been noticing ever since March, and there are ups and downs. Products that have been selling as has heavily have tapered a little bit, but products like our One Wipe Charlie's as a replica for toilet paper. Basically, it's a hygiene, wet wipes kind of product, which has immensely increased, and we see why. So this is our opportunity to give back to the community when we say that we are offering these for the community to use, and you can buy it at a subsidized price or whatever. It shows that the community understands that we care for the community. So we see the conversion of those cohorts from one-time purchases to more of recurring purchases.
Alex, we were talking about this as we were getting ready, and I know one of the interesting things that I really love about the Everseen is that you've somehow blended what I think of digital capabilities with understanding consumer behaviors and bringing that into the physical world using computer vision. I'm wondering, with what Sarita just talked about and understanding consumer behaviors, we had this perfect collection. Maybe some of that share that's going back when we transition, we get the vaccine, as Brad said, it does go to physical retail. But are there things that retailers should be thinking about bringing those digital types of capabilities that really engaged people back into the physical world? And how should we be thinking about that?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I mean, a lot of great comments were made so far, right? And Brad said it. It's just another layer, right? It's another layer of data. That's another way for you to look at computer vision, right? And the difference is it's data in the now, right? So the thing that you and I have kind of talked about in the past here is looking at this as continuous intelligence, not just real time, right? And so coming from a background of merchandising planning and forecasting and pricing, right? So from my Walgreens days to my Blue Yonder days, we always wished, man, if I had the data right now, if I knew it was on the shelf right now, what would I do, right? Because if you think about all the models and all the beginning of AI and machine learning, it was all about predicting uncertainty. I love your chart. I mean, I don't mean to, we have a pandemic, period, end of story, right? But we did have other catastrophes before that, and we are going to have more different things after that, right? So now it's not a matter of if, And it's not even a matter of when, right? It's a matter of how do you stop and drop this, you and I joked about this, right? We called it resilient retail. Great. We have another R, right? So in the collection, right? It's the clash or the stages of R. And it's the same thing, right? It's a mind shift of a mindset. We used to react to things. Now we need to respond to things, right? We used to react, quickly recover, get back together, restore it, right? And then repeat the play, right? From a retailer perspective. Now it's like, forget that. You can't do that. You have to respond and rebound, but do so in such a way that while you're dribbling the ball, if I can use a basketball analogy, you're literally retooling. Or I'll use the classic, we got to change the wheel while we're driving, right? Kind of going down. And you have to understand how you're going to reinvent. From our perspective, the idea of having a point and click visual AI platform, and I call it a platform, right? Because computer vision is commoditized. People could download free things, they can do all of that, but you need something to plug and play immediately so you can have that continuous intelligence. And why do I need continuous intelligence? So I can do action, right? Action intelligence. You all know, we all grew up in CPG and retail, and it's all about activation. I mean, Robert deals with this every single day, to how do I get stuff into the front line as fast as possible. So for me, it's breaking down the barriers, right? I have learned humbly, right, working for a company of 150 people, that when you're engaging in an ecosystem, you can't be everything to everybody and you can't do it all by yourself. So we look for the good partners. We look for people that can enable us, right? Whether it was cloud players, GPU players, people to figure out how we can create that ecosystem inside the retailer and then create it uncommon partnerships, right? But in those uncommon partnerships, we bumped into typical stuff. We ran out of plugs in certain stores to plug in the GPUs.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough bandwidth in the T1 in the stores, right? So as retailers, come back into this, they're re-examining everything. But the most beautiful thing about it, and Rob, you hit it, right? Time, speed to value is not measured, in weeks, let alone days, right? Now it's about doing it live. And you've run out, and you know this, you and Robert both know this. We've run out of excuses to not do live tests, controlled experiments, right? In the moment. And in the spirit of everybody being analytical on the phone, I'm pushing for live A/B testing. Test something in the East Coast during rush hour, redo it again in the Midwest, redo it again 2 hours later, right, in the West Coast. And you're learning from one time zone to the next, and you're able to move that through. We are there, right? And companies like yours are enabling us to do that.
You raise a really interesting point with as much as we want to be digitally enabled in a lot of our businesses. I talk about how consumer goods brands are wanting to do things in the plant, and yet often the barrier to that is having a connection that is more than a dial-up between the plant to the central area. I think about the same thing from a retail operations perspective, and as much as we want to be algorithmic and use AI to engage, it still comes down to a lot of individual hands. I gave the stat of several million people that our customers collectively employ. Robert, every single day, tens of thousands of your employees are going out in the field doing work that's algorithmic. I walk in any retail store in the U.S., Canada, and other areas, and there's a good chance it's one of your employees. How have you been thinking about that? And what are ways that you're thinking about data science and AI to help with all the physical disruptions to that supply chain?
Yeah, and it's funny. This is all connecting really well. So just a little background. So we have 22,000 reps that go into brick and mortar stores every day, 800,000 stores, you name it. If it's done in a store, we're doing it, right? So imagine COVID hitting you, right? And then also having, kind of the challenges of stores being closed. And I love what Alex said. We didn't whine about it. We dealt with it. It was like, okay, we got this problem. We're going to solve this problem. And the way we solved it is we got a little smarter than we were before. And then the next day, a little smarter. And we did it through, in often a lot of cases, being able to model out outcomes. So as an example, picture dealing with the churn of reps, right, that are potentially not wanting to go to work because of COVID, and not necessarily us reliably knowing where it might get soft and where it might not. We quickly built out a ton of models that took into consideration everywhere from where they are in their career and likelihood to go to the COVID density in the stores they work, the demand that's coming their way for work, and then kind of wrapping that all up into a, hey, where's the puck going, by running model after model after model after model after model. Next thing you know, now we're resilient. I mean, whatever it is, take COVID out, put another variable in. God forbid anything bad happened, but that's what I think. I'm proud of the organization, and we just kind of did it. It's horrible, but we did it, and we solved it with technology that are enabling work streams. And we didn't just create a toy to play with. We created a business platform, right, that the enabling technologies perpetuate, right? And it changed our culture. It changed who we are. We're having conversations every day that are fact-based. And guess what? We're not waiting 3 weeks for someone to do a Tableau workbook. No offense to love Tableau, by the way. But it is just a fluid model running every day. And everyone in the room is smarter. And that part's fun to watch. The circumstances show that, but that's how we're dealing with it. And I see that as resiliency, because you take that variable out, put a new one in, kaput, and we're gonna keep on with that model, and we're gonna grow. So, and it's embedded.
Rob, let me add to Robert.
It's embedded in our culture.
Oops, sorry, Robert.
Yeah, my bad. Go ahead.
No. Let me add to you, Robert, because Rob, you were I thought you were going here for a second, before you passed the ball to Robert, right? This is not about replacing people, right? I guess I have to say it, right? Just because we're in computer vision, right? It's like, we had something initially, overused marketing term, right? Human-centric AI. At the end of the day, the point is you can't do it, without human beings, right? I grew up in retail. I still believe that whole notion of experience is going to be there. People are going to want to touch something, right? Seeing is believing, touching is understanding, we used to say, right? But at the same time, right, you asked me this yesterday, Rob, it's like, what's the new? If it's not convenience, if it's not value, what is it? I guess it's safely being in stock, right?
Yeah.
If I can say it that way, right? But back to Robert, we've had conversations with Robert's industry, right? In terms of how can we enable. Robert also used the word platform, but the greatest word you used, Robert, was fluid, right? And I love what you're saying. Take one variable out, put in the next one. You need to be able to literally immediately be active on whatever that is, right? And I think that's that response time and giving that person the opportunity to understand that. We found ourselves from a loss prevention use case, right, to literally dealing with how can we make sure that an order is being picked the right way in the warehouse so it can basically get there by 7 a.m. to fill the demand of 8 to 12 online grocery pickup, right? That's all, again, I got to be careful how I say this. COVID-19 was like Black Friday, right? When it first hit and people were going through, what we saw going through the register was a heck of a lot of items, but also one new thing, right? We worked really hard to understand personal items, a wallet, a cell phone that people might be leaving down. Now a personal item is sanitary wipes, right? That's what changed. We needed to kind of understand that, right? Now it was a bigger cart. Things are being left in the cart. Field of view needed to change. So it's just a matter of learning and learning in the wild, right? So I don't believe in labs. We have over 3,000 of them. It's every single store in the US and in Europe that basically has our software. And we can do things in silent mode. And if we collaborate and talk about what we saw, that's where the desktop review is. The difference is it's not back in headquarters. It's in the lunchroom in the back of the store, right? I mean, and that's the beauty of it, that any one of these areas is basically immediately a war room, right? You called it a control tower, I guess, Robert, right? So, I mean, that it's like you have those all around the industry.
Now, I want to jump to something else, but before I go there, I have a follow-up question for you. One of the things that we saw with retail when it first came out was everybody had the picture of I'm standing 6 feet away from the person in front of me. And these general rules of safety, right? And the worst ones were the Burger King hat that kept you separated physically. I'm wondering, though, that assumes that everything is consistent, and yet we know that there's a lot of variety in terms of shopping occasions, and you said something that triggered this when you mentioned like my phone or my wallet. If I set that down, that becomes a safety aspect in here. What's the role of technology that you see in terms of helping? Safety is becoming a big driver. What's the role technology can play in helping to ensure a safe shopping journey?
Listen, I want to be careful how I say this because I said no to a lot of partners, both from let's just say technology partners and SIs and others in the space that called up and said, do you have a COVID-19 piece of software? Can you actually tell the distance between people? Can you, measure people's temperatures, etc.? My answer to all those is yes, but what do you want to do? What are you trying to do, right? And you know me, I love retail practical, right? So what are we going to do with that data? I give it to you. What are you going to do with it, right? How are you going to implement it immediately? I was on a couple of panels with retailers, dealing with loss prevention, and between our tech and fraudulent $20 bills showing up during COVID-19, believe it or not, right? These are real things that you needed to kind of deal with in there. I hate to put it this way, right? But clickers and blue masking tape did a great job, and Costco executed the best that they could. And at the end of the day, we're not going to introduce a technology for technology's sake. This is the classic tech in, consumer out. Not doing that. It's consumer in, technology out. We're working with our customers to understand what the new normal is, right? What the new process while you're checking out is, and where is the smartest way to do that. So yes, did we have tech to understand that? We did it, right? And so now I can tell you, and I can alert when somebody's, engaged and there's more than two people and one might be the associate, that they're standing too close to one another. But we're doing more so in forms of reporting so people can understand the importance of having that new vernacular, right? We're also doing it where the machine is telling you when I need to be cleaned. And that's a governor. It's up to the retailer how to do it. Like Costco, it's every two, transactions where they do that, right? And I'll give you a funny one, right? This was tech that we were sitting on. And the reason we were sitting on it outside of our own version of Amazon Go that's been out there for a while is we realized that during night, we were getting the self-checkout machines were being bumped by the cleaning machines. So we would wake up to a day and the machine would not be registered right. We're like, what the hell happened? We're off by 2 or 3 inches. So we build tech to appreciate that during the cleaning process of the store, a self-checkout machine might be bumped. So we had to organize and reorient that focus. But then effectively, if the focus got too far out, we're like, raise your hand. You need to come move me back. I'm out of focus. Guess what? Now I'm raising my hand to say, come clean me. These things are doable, right? But you got to put it in the process to fit with the consumer understanding or experience. And the way that I put it to a lot of people is, I never was a believer in frictionless retail, but I am a big believer in less friction. Yeah. And I hope you understand the difference between that, right? We get stuck in the technology of frictionless as opposed to the retail practical of wherever there's friction, remove it, right? So it's about less friction, not frictionless.
Brad and Sarita, this is a really interesting vein when we talk about the disruptions to business and the operations and starting to bring in more digital types of capabilities back in. Maybe that's part of the shift, is that it's not just moving to e-commerce, but maybe we're actually shifting as a W type of curve where we bring it back in. I'll start with Sarita. One of the things that we saw a lot of as driving a lot of consumption in traditional retail was the use of sampling. And now that lever's been taken away from consumer goods brands to do new introduction and trial, they're trying to find new ways to engage. I know that Dollar Shave Club has great programs in terms of sampling, but what do you think about as we go back to this more integrated hybrid in the future? Are there ways to converge to bring together your digital and physical sampling and understanding consumers and perhaps have something better than we did before?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the question. So definitely e-commerce is at a disadvantage when it comes to look and feel or test it before you purchase it, right? So we initially started off sending samples of products, free samples of products in their boxes whenever we do a shipment saying we have these other products too, why don't you try it? But consumer behavior-wise, what we understood is a free sample is just a free sample, not worth using. But when you provide a list of items, an a la carte of items, and say that these are the samples you can purchase maybe for $1 each, try it out. If you like it, you can purchase a larger volume of the product in your next box. I see people higher engagement from people. So Dollar Shave Club introduced programs like trial kits or starter kits, where when you are a new customer to us, you are planning to join the club, that's how we call it, member of the club. We actually provide you a list of products and say that go take a look at them, purchase it probably $5. You can get 3 products. You can try it out. It's not just a razor kit or a shave cream or a razor blade, but try our shampoos, try our sunscreen or One Wipe Charlie, and see if you like it. This model is actually working because the users are investing some money in order to get the product, so they're eager to use it and try it out, as well as if they like it, obviously our products are of great quality as well as cost effective. So we do see conversion happening on the site. This is kind of helping us go on par with what retailers, the great sampling that Costco does. I love it. When you go and walk into Macy's and to the fashion aisle, you can try out all these cosmetics, which obviously e-commerce is not having the same advantage of. You're trying to compensate a little bit of it through these trial kits and new starter kit formula.
Hey, Robert, I know you guys do a lot of demos, and I know that you like to go around Sam's Club and try all the little mini pizzas and the food whenever you're doing your demos there.
Yeah.
But how can your customers? I mean, when I go into a Costco or a Sam's Club now, I'm just going and engaging, and I'm just getting that. I'm walking away, and hopefully it leads to incrementality of the sales. Right, and I measure that after the fact. I know there's a great ROI in terms of demoing. How can brands be thinking about bringing some sort of these data-rich digital types of capabilities into that type of demo or sampling type of environment? Are you doing any thinking around that?
Yeah, and some of it's not new thinking, to be humble a bit, right? But it's obviously with the challenges of COVID and the proximity that's just naturally inherent in sampling, we've had to get creative. But certainly the idea of digital sampling tables, right? That sounds kind of mundane, but they're pretty effective for testing a lot of those. And also, in addition to that, the cross data provisions that comes from that is quite useful because it's one layer down from what you even get from loyalty card data that we use quite extensively to calculate ROI. And quite honestly, I think the thinking is, because we can do things that were tougher to do years and years ago, we can create true marketing mixes that actually distinguish between that driver, because it is very effective of incremental volume growth, I have to say yet again, and I am biased, but also informing our clients so that they can make the right decision with the right driver. And I know I'm taking a tangent to your question. I actually think is something that is equally valuable that in the past you couldn't do and scale against 100 clients affordably. And now I think we're there. And I want to bring something back again to what Alex said. There is sort of some simplicity to what we do, and that one-to-one experience of sampling it's such a journey for people with families, and you can't dismiss the importance of it, right? And I know it's bouncing back as we speak, but certainly the tie and information across to e-commerce and back it's been an embarrassment of riches. It's a function of grabbing it and not just creating toys. It's actually creating true actionable platforms that will drive it into Alex's point being fluid, right? So,
one thing that's interesting.
If I can,
yeah.
All right. So, Robert, you brought a very good point, and I thought I will take this chance to actually explain what we have been experiencing. Right, when you talk about the sampling, the data that you collect when people are going for trial kits or trying out samples, even in a retail shop or an e-commerce arena, is how are they engaging with the product? You get to collect a lot more of people's interest and behavioral patterns. So when your replenishment model should kick in, when your recommendation models can actually leverage these dimensions and the metrics that are coming out of this. It is actually enriching behind the scenes our upsell models, as well as improving the lifetime value of the consumers, understanding on which cohorts we should place them when we are doing segmentation with this consumer basis. And there's also an opportunity that is giving us a lot of these consumers who are going marching into the retail or in the e-commerce arena, looking at the content, trying out our different samples. They act as very good influencers. Actually, they go into the social media, they post that I have tried this from Dollar Shave Club. It's a fabulous product. I'm planning to buy the full size product next time. We are converting our own samplers into influencers, as well as somebody who drive higher lifetime value tiers for us and a quicker, payback period for us. So we are trying to optimize our CPA through these models, and it's giving us a lot more rich data set where there is an improvement in brand efficiency.
Yeah, it's really interesting. If we could somehow take the experience that you're seeing with Dollar Shave Club and pair it with the work that I know Robert's team does for physical sampling and demoing and engaging, and what Brad's team does with loyalty, and somehow bring that all together, we'd have an amazing efficiency gain, I think, in terms of how we engage. I think probably the thing that people have to figure out is what's that data collection point that actually associates that physical person with the individual.
So, Rob?
Yeah.
We have close to about 20 minutes left, and a few questions that came in Q&A. I think a lot of them we've addressed here, but there were a couple that are related to privacy that I think might be worth discussing. With more people moving their shopping towards online and registering for some of these new fill-in-store services that require online registration, there's a lot of new consumer data that's out there, and there's not a lot of conversation about privacy. Where do you think when we hit the new norm, consumers will be with regard to their stance on expectations for the management of that data, and how can retailers start preparing for that now?
Brad, I think that's right in your sweet spot. You want to take that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think knowing that we have people probably coming in from all over the world, it's hard to provide a one-size-fits-all answer because I think it's very much, let's say, regionally dependent. What I think is clear, though, is that regardless of what country you're in, the bar is moving upwards in terms of what consumers are expecting. Some of it driven by the likes of Facebook and Google in terms of kind of deprioritizing the concept of cookies. And, as cookies become weaker and weaker, as Apple and Google starts turning and shutting these things down, first-party data becomes king. That's a little bit driven by their own interests and also a lot driven by consumer behavior. That combined with the likes of GDPR and the Californian privacy legislation all point to kind of rising bars for privacy. And so I think the opportunity here is, regardless of what environment you're in, expect that the bar is going to rise. And if you're depending on data that is questionable in the landscape that you are in, you had best look really hard at how you're getting that data and what your future is going to look like, and start building up trust and affinity and the right kind of data collection processes that are going to keep you in the game long term. Everybody uses the term data is oil. Well, in some places these taps are going to start closing, and you had best know where to get it. And I think thanks, Rob, for the pushback to me as taking the question, because I think loyalty programs are one of the ways where you do create a kind of a trusted relationship around there is a clear social contract between the loyalty program, the retailer, and the consumer that says the consumer understands that we're going to use that data to market to you. You're going to get something back. We're going to get something back. It's a win-win-win. A lot of data collection practices don't have that implicit kind of sharing of benefits. And so I think that's the risk, or that's the thing to think about. The opportunity is if you get really good at doing that, when the privacy bars start rising in your landscape, you're going to have people that are scrambling at the last minute to try to figure out solutions for it, and you're going to be comfortably ahead of them and able to actually thrive in an environment like that.
Rob, if I can add to Brad and take it kind of on the computer vision side, right? So, company born in Ireland with offices in Romania and Serbia, doing business in the U.S. So just think about that for a second. I'll let that sink in, right? So growing up in GDPR, what I found out, right, is that we were already under more strict regulation coming into the U.S. So in a lot of ways, it put extra weight on us to make sure that we're doing things the right way and introducing people to what a best demonstrated practice would be in terms of just the documentation. To Brad's point, right, from one country to another, gosh, I'm trying to do stuff right now in warehouses, and I have a different time doing that in Illinois versus what I can do in Texas. And I'll let you guess or research which one is easier versus harder, right? But for whatever it's worth, right, there is new conversations now. It's not only your data security officer, it's down to IP. It goes without saying, faces are blurred and anything that we're doing, that's tech that we need to kind of have, and it comes with as table stakes in what you have. But I'll give you another one, right? So legal documentation, technology being where it needs to be, making sure what that data is. Somebody's opting in right now, right? The same way that they opted in with you, Brad, kind of on a loyalty program, right? And I joked around that I first opted in with my iPhone, letting it unlock when I was seeing it. But then within there, so does my Citibank app, and so does my Outlook and my WhatsApp, right? And so effectively, my face, right, has become a piece of ID that unconsciously or consciously, I'm opening it up. Do I think about it more than my 16-year-old son? Absolutely. All right. Now, am I trying to teach my son, who now is at the point where new job, driver's license, there's new numbers about him that are unique, that are now officially like, part of this new world? And if I could go back, and you and I joked about this in your past life, right, with NCR, how many credit cards would I really own, right? If I just start all over again, right? How, do I deal with cash or I deal with credit? I think all of this stuff, a lot of folks are kind of rethinking. We're seeing a lot more use of cash, right, in the cash registers than what you saw before, just because people didn't want to touch stuff, right? I mean, or to your point, look at your wallets. How many new credit cards are we getting in the U.S. that now officially are tap and go? When I first went back to my native Greece and somebody asked me if my credit card was fill in the word in Greek, I'm like, what do you mean, touchless on the card? I didn't understand the expression. It's like, well, and what effectively they were saying, which today I know is contactless, I had no idea what that concept was, right? And this was 2 years ago, right? Where it was basically the norm on the other side of the world. So I think we're going to see a lot of that come into play, but also you see customers that are understanding that if I want certain access and I want certain things, I am going to basically offer more. Now, the joke in our industry is, well, now we're wearing masks, right? So from a computer vision perspective, I have a mask on now, right? So there is a little bit more privacy. Sorry, bad joke, right? But if you think about it, it's reality, right? It's a reality that I'm going to blur this part of the face now, right? Because I don't need to blur this part. So again, did we expect that when we were blurring faces? I have to deal with this now being masked. So
we could have a whole separate conversation on designing computer vision for unexpected shapes and things, probably just on that one specific thing. There's another question that came up. I never really thought of it this way. Sarita, when I think about loyalty and subscription models, loyalty to me was always, I have episodic purchases with a retailer, but I'm able to look at the collection of those episodes holistically in loyalty. It gives me a view to all my purchase and my engagement with a customer over time. Subscription is an annuitized type of revenue stream, but are loyalty and subscription just two sides of the same coin?
They are very much well interrelated. Loyalty is an indicator where you'll see a longer term of subscription from the user. Loyalty is also an indicator that not only the same old products are being sustainably purchased by the users, but they have higher efficiency towards your brand. So they are the ones who are ready to adopt when you release a new product into the marketplace. When you make a shift into your business model, your loyal customers are the customers who show the consistency and they build your baseline. So if you are building resilience into your business model, which should be the second nature in the volatility we see in the marketplace, loyalty is the key aspect. And it's a direct indicator on how many subscriptions are you increasing, the incremental growth you're seeing in your company.
A couple other questions that came in, and by the way, these are really good questions coming in. Post-COVID, what would the shopping preferences? What are everybody's predictions? Are they going to move? Are we going to accelerate the rate of digital adoption? Are we going to shift back to physical shopping? I'll put you on the spot, and in a year we'll come back and see how accurate. Where do you think we're going to end up in terms of penetration? In the U.S., we were at 27% during the peak of COVID, 16% before that. What percentage of retail shopping, and pick the U.S., do you think will be e-commerce based a year from now?
You're asking me, Rob?
I'm asking all of you.
Okay. Anybody wants to take, or I can give my prediction?
What's your bet?
So there, I'll go a little bit backwards. Forrester did a case study, and they released that this is back in 2019, pre-COVID. They said in 2022 there will be about 17% of e-commerce purchases that'll be taking over, cannibalizing the retail sales. Now, we are in the middle of this pandemic right now, and we are already seeing we are hitting about 25% of retail sales are taken over by e-commerce. Even though we are going to open up our retail stores to normal lifestyle going forward, there will be a shift where a lot of consumers are going to adopt to convenience-based purchasing, going to social media, reading a lot of content before they make the conversion or the purchase. So you will see a big shift in digitalization, and a lot of adoption is based on the content you're going to push, the different kind of ratings you're going to provide, your comments you're going to give. So it's going to be an interesting model as you move forward. It's not going to go back below 25% for sure, and it might increase a little bit more. And there might be for companies who are new in the area and are actually selling essential goods. It may decrease a little bit because it's no more an essential good right now. It's available on retail shops. There are more options, more discounts, more choices available for consumers. But it will definitely be around the 30% arena. And all the retailers who have a digital presence, who have a good e-commerce presence and can push content out, has this multi-channel, omni-channel approach and strategy. So they have presence on the social media. They can do audio, video, display, everything. Rich media ads. Those are the companies who will be able to be resilient and keep growing incrementally going forward. But I think a lot is how much of the retail space is going to adopt into the digital space. That's what is going to mandate.
So you're kind of you're saying no less than 25%, possibly more than in certain channels. I think an interesting tidbit is Nike, which does direct consumer sales. 30% of the revenue actually comes through e-commerce types of sales, which I never would have expected. Brad, Alex, Robert, what's the number a year from now for penetration? I want to put you on the spot so I can come back and hold you to it in a year.
Can I say plus or minus 3?
Sure.
Hey, look, I think, it's going to bounce. I don't know if it's bouncing back, but I think the company has changed, and we all know a lot of that is for good. I think some companies are going to suffer and may not be able to bounce back to be available for that time. So all the great thoughts have already been made. So I thought that was a good response. I will say winter's coming, and I hope a year is a good time frame for us to predict against. So,
yeah.
How's that for safe?
That's a good non-answer on a number there. Yeah. Hey, another question here. That came up. We've got some really good questions coming up through this.
So you're gonna let us off the
Yeah, go ahead. I thought we were just trying to hold on to responding.
I wanted to hear Brad's number, but so I'll set it up for Brad, right? So I think first of all, I think Sarita did a great job, and Robert, you did as well, right? In terms of kind of answering it, and what I heard in Robert, which I think we're in agreement with in terms of winter is coming. If retailers can't figure out how to be in stock, that number is going to go higher in terms of like what you're going to see digital, right? If we can't figure out how to safely have stuff available, we're already used to it, right? I have a staging area in my house, or at least it used to be, where things were delivered, would get cleaned, and then they would get opened, right? In terms of, we all did that as a household, right? I think, when you kind of look at, that space, right? And in general, like what's going to drive that, I'm going to ask you if I'm going to pre-order, put my whole grocery list together through Alexa, right? Then only to have it and then actually place the order at walmart.com and do online grocery pickup. Are you going to consider that e-com? Because that's going to be, kind of part of, I think, the new norm, right? It's all about curbside pickup, less touch, right? But effectively, I still get to go there. If when I get there, 4 out of 10 products were substituted because it wasn't in stock, I'm not going to repeat that often, right? I'm going to get upset, and that brand might lose me altogether. And gosh, still I'm talking about Nike, because the 16-year-old is part of that 30% community, right? And the problem is he doesn't just buy it from Nike, right? There's other places that kind of come. So I think a year from today, I think that number is going to continuously increase, but how? I think we need to break it down and understand the sources, because it's going to differ by channel. It's going to differ by brand, right? There's a different story on how a P&G sells versus a Nike. There's a different approach for a Costco that's got a very defined set of items versus, the 150,000, SKUs at any given point in time that are active, in grocers or mass retailers. Brad, I'm avoiding the question as well, so I'm passing.
Yeah, no, yeah. I see many words but few numbers. What else? I'll throw us knowing that you can't hold me accountable for the number, which is the best kind of forecast. I think it's gonna recede from the peak of where it has been, but it's going to be accelerating what was the long-term trend. So if you were at 16, you're at 27, I'm going to call kind of a middle ground of about 20%. I think some people are going to miss some of the experience of good retail, and I think it's certainly going to accelerate what is the longer term trend. I think Alex is absolutely right about kind of what is e-com anyway, with the way that the channels are being so mixed between physical and digital. But I would call it 20%.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point for all of you. Alex, you mentioned some interesting things too. As I was thinking through it, like e-commerce in the grocery channel, I think Albertsons had 242% growth. Walmart had 72% growth. Publix had a huge growth. Hy-Vee, my old local grocer, had 700% e-commerce growth. But what does that actually mean? And I think we may start seeing things where you see channels like more subscription. I mean, I signed up for ButcherBox, which is meat delivery, because there was scarcity. And I tell you what, right now I would pay a lot of money for Lysol delivery if I knew I could actually get guaranteed delivery of Lysol to my house.
I think our shopping baskets will change. Robert, you reminded me of something, right? I was joking with my old alma mater of Walgreens that it took a pandemic to finally pass through the RX window product that wasn't prescription.
Yeah.
Right? But think about that for a second. If I have a regular pattern and I have to go through the drive-through at Walgreens, what other item am I willing to throw in there? And that's being stolen from another channel, quote unquote, right? So I think it's still going to be about less trips, right? How can I collaborate all of it, right? And to Brad's point, I still want to kind of experience it, but I'm a big fan of Best Buy, right? And and I thought they did a fantastic job during COVID with curbside pickup and how they took advantage of their parking lot in front, and then eventually they went in by appointment only. It lasted a week and a half maybe, right? Because I think they were, and there was I just told everybody that I am once again, right, the showroom for where people come and see stuff, and then I go and I buy it somewhere else, right? So, but Best Buy, everybody's going to move their model to what they stand for. Everybody, right? For me, it's a spot that I trust, right? I can talk to somebody. I'm really engaged with Geek Squad. All these elements, I'm only using Best Buy as an analogy to your grocery store. This raise that and 300%, 200%, whatever the number is, from one grocer to another, they're going to figure curbside pickup, and they're going to make it better, and they're going to start taking chapters out of the HEBs or the market streets that we have here locally, Robert, right, where somebody walks out and takes your bags to your car. They're going to figure out, hey, we can't too, right? And then that's going to create, I think, less trips and more organized.
It's interesting. One comment, then I'll hand over to Brian. One comment on Best Buy. 70% of their sales during COVID were actually curbside pickup. They made that transition seamlessly. Now, their stores are closed, so the other 30% was e-commerce. Yeah, Brian.
Just going to let you know we have 5 minutes left, and so maybe one last question for the group.
Okay, so let's find one last really good question. So data and AI, we've had a really good discussion about trends on what we're seeing. We've focused on the value that we have in some of the immediate types of use cases. What are the areas of AI and data that you think over the next 5 years will have the biggest impact on our industry? And Brad, I'll go left to right. Brad, I'll begin with you.
Sweet. First off, thanks for having me. I would say the thing that I am the most excited by is reinforcement learning for marketing. The reason is having been in this marketing analytics space for basically my whole career, it finally gets us out of the drudgery of segments and segment type of marketing and really focuses on letting the marketer be the marketer, but also drives the results that they're looking for. For me, unlike churn models or propensity models, where there's still a lot of that other thinking and a lot of the other hydraulics of then still trying to figure out how do I optimize to the ROI, reinforcement learning puts that all at the very front, something that we've been working on for a few years now, and frankly, it's delivering exactly what I had hoped it would be when we started down the path.
Awesome. Alex, and we got 4 minutes.
Yep. I'm going to use a quote that we came up with together with you and Rob during our Crossmark days, right? From thought to bought, right? We're in there, right? That's the piece. And I think I'll be selfish, right? And I'll take it from a software perspective. It's no longer about bake-offs, and it's about proving your ROI as fast as you can. So I think, to use Robert's word, you need to see fluidity, not only between divisions and how they understand their data and how they understand what data matters. And Brad, I'm going to disagree with you. It's not oil anymore. I think it's water. And some of that water is really dirty and some of that water is really clean, right? And we have to figure out where are we getting all of these? And lakes and rivers and streams and oceans, right? And this is one of the reasons why I'm excited with the value props of people like Databricks, right? Is we need to cut out the noise, the classic signal from the noise, right? And we just need to figure out in that thought to bot, who's your partner and how can you quickly action intelligence, period.
Awesome. Saritha, what are your thoughts? Next 5 years, what's the one thing that's going to have the biggest impact?
Thank you so much for having me, and I love your answer, Alex. There are several areas ML is going to flourish going forward in the next few years. Customer churn, you touched upon it, Brad. It's been there. It will flourish for sure. It's essential. But segmentation and targeting. And Alex was saying customer attribution, marketing mix modeling, recommendation engines, customer lifetime value. These are the different models that are going to extrapolate and improve the businesses going forward.
Excellent. Last but not least, Robert, what do you think? What's going to change our industry?
And you had this danger. Alex might have taken some of my answer, but he did. I was even going to use thought to bot. I'm not kidding. But net, I would say, there you go. I think it's going to become effortless. I think you're going to see organizational change because I think that it's going to get so, I'm going to do air quote, easy to have great analytics that are fluid. And there, you're going to start to see departments that have to innovate to survive, and it's a good thing. So sales organizations that have traditional relationship-based, that have been around basically the same for a long, long time, I'm not referring to my own company, just companies in general, I think you're going to see that cognitive enterprise that everybody kept talking about, right, where there are business platforms and a culture that absolutely, where it's no longer about the mechanics of the analytics and the data. I think it's going to be effortless and it's going to be ubiquitous and it's going to be great. But the problem is there'll be a level playing field unless people get it. So, hey, thanks for having me, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, Alex, Saritha, Robert, again, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. It was a great session, and I'll close it right now. Thank you.